Hey, Alicia Novin here. I'm sure you've heard a lot about the imposter syndrome, and it's something that we all suffer from, and so I wanted to share 5 things that I do to help myself manage through it. Here we go. I began my professional career as a coder in 2006. And I say professional because I'd been coding for many years before that, even making money on some projects. I'd done freelance work, I'd made games, I'd built websites and done stuff for student groups. And yet when I went out and tried to interview with companies, I kept on butting into the fact that I didn't have a computer science degree. I graduated with a physics degree, and so taking that non-traditional route meant that I couldn't easily land a job, even though I'd taken some computer science courses. And eventually I landed my first job, and that led to my second and then my third job, but I always felt like people were taking a chance on me and I didn't truly deserve it. And I was always worried someone would bust down the doors and say, "We found you out, you don't belong here," and I'd lose it all. And over the years, I gradually learned that that sense, that feeling, that anxiety that I was feeling was called the imposter syndrome. And it's something that is a lot more common and shared by many other people, including those who do have computer science degrees. Now today, it's more common for people to take a non-traditional route, and maybe they've taken a boot camp, maybe they've spent 5 years in one career path and they've decided that they want to get into tech. And so I think that sense of being an imposter is a lot more prevalent and a lot more people feel it. And that's why I wanted to make this video and share the things that I've learned to do over the years of my career and how I address that sense whenever it comes up, because it still comes up to this day. And so I hope these 5 tips will help you out. Here we go with number 1. Whenever I'm feeling like I don't belong, or I don't really know what I'm doing, or I start to panic or worry about how much I truly know, I usually try to look at what is the moment and what is causing me to feel that way. Because it's usually something very specific, and it might just point to something that I don't yet know about, or I don't know as much as I thought I did. I'm just not comfortable with the amount of knowledge I have about it. So the first thing I try to do is find what the root of that feeling is, what is causing it, the trigger. And once I can figure out what it is, the next step is simply researching it. And I know that that's pretty obvious, but I think too often when we start feeling that, it just sort of overwhelms us in terms of makes us question our choices, and we start to worry about, if other people think that we're not very good at what we do, that we lose sight of the fact that there's a very clear thing that's out there that is causing us to feel that doubt. And if you can pinpoint it, then you know what you can Google. And once you know what you need to Google, that's more than half the battle. Once I've identified the thing that triggered that sense of doubt that I was feeling, and I've spent some time researching and learning about what I need to be doing, and I've started to grow that confidence, the next thing that I'm doing is immediately talking to other people about what I've learned. And I try to apply it to the same problem that was triggering that sense of doubt. Because that problem was pretty recent, and if I've been moving quickly, I'll be able to apply it almost immediately, and that helps me retain the information and retain what I'm learning and reinforce the ability to learn and the ability to address those concerns, so that anxiety that I feel about not knowing something becomes smaller over time, because I know and I can become more confident in my ability to address that anxiety quickly by learning quickly. I try to keep notes on things that I need to learn and things that I've learned. And the nice part about keeping those notes is that it gives you a progression. It gives you a sense of what you've learned and how far you've come. And it's a reminder of the fact that you can continually learn and improve and get better. Especially when you look at notes from things that you did a few years ago and you see just how simple and basic the things that you were struggling with back then are, it gives you a sense of how far you've come. And so the next thing that I do after I've been finding the trigger and then researching and then applying it is I also have those notes that remind myself about the fact that this was a problem I dealt with and this is how I was able to overcome it. It's so easy to get inside your own head and be super self-critical and put your own work down and just berate it constantly. And so when I'm really stuck in that pattern, I try to break myself out of it by consulting with people that I admire, people who I would say are not imposters at what they do. And sometimes those are more formal people that I would consider mentors, and sometimes it's a less formal kind of approach where it's someone that I know well and I just try to get their input on something. But the point is that I try to break out of my own head and get other people to give me feedback on what I'm doing so that they can help steer me and give me more perspective on what I'm doing. And oftentimes they'll give me good feedback on how I can adjust and how I can improve, but it also reaffirms to me that the baseline of what I'm doing is still good and it's still valuable. For most of my career now, I've felt like an imposter, and I've learned that one of the best things that I can do is really just embrace that feeling and appreciate it for what it is. Now, I think it's important to keep that sense of anxiety and that fear a healthy one, but ultimately I've learned that imposter syndrome is something that can be very productive and helpful to me. It's a red flag that tells me that there's something that I don't feel comfortable about, and I should go and try to make myself more comfortable with it. I should go and learn, I should take some action and do what I need to do so that I don't feel like an imposter. And I think that that's really important because I think about the opposite, where if I didn't have that sense of being an imposter, it would almost make me feel like I'm arrogantly confident about what I can do and I'm no longer pushing myself to grow. And instead, I want to continuously grow and improve what I'm doing. And so that imposter syndrome is, in a lot of ways, me doubting myself and critiquing what I'm doing so that I can continuously look at ways to improve and what I can be doing more to help myself be better. And so I think in that way, the imposter syndrome can be very, very powerful and enabling you and pushing you to continuously find ways to be better and to continuously grow, as opposed to just stagnating and being very confident about where you're at and having that sense that there's no more that you can possibly do to be better. Those 5 ways are how I address the imposter syndrome, and it's how I feel more confident about myself and the work that I can do. The last thing I'll say is that I think it's very easy for coders to feel like an imposter simply because so much of the work that we do is cerebral. It's thinking work. We're constantly solving some kind of problem. And we do that by writing code. And that code that we write is representative of our brain and how our brain perceived the problem and broke it down and created the solution. And it's so easy to criticize code. It's so easy to find fault in it. And anyone who criticizes our code, it just feels like they're criticizing us and our brain and how our brain works. And when you feel that way, and then you're simultaneously seeing other people who are tackling problems and they're coming up with solutions, but you're unaware of all the inner workings that they're having, you don't know what experience they're drawing from, it's very easy to elevate all of those other people while putting yourself down. And as a result, you start to feel like an imposter. And I think the way that we address this all collectively, because we all feel like imposters at one point or another, is by being a lot better about explaining our approach to problems. By not just saying, here are the 5 steps that I took, or here's the thing that I found, but being a lot more vulnerable about where we had knowledge gaps and talking more about the experience that we're drawing from and the times where we saw something similar and how we were able to relate it to this type of problem. The better we can explain the overall process, the better we can just elevate one another. Because I think that way, we're giving people who might have less experience that they can immediately draw from a set of tools that they can turn to and find and be better equipped to solve problems that they've never seen before by just knowing a bit more about the process. So I'm gonna leave it there. Tell me what you think. I always enjoy getting comments from you all. And I'll lastly just tell you about my podcast called Increments. You can find it on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. And it's a podcast where I talk a little bit about the imposter syndrome and topics around that, but more focused around growth and how we as technologists want to grow in our careers. I hope you'll check it out, and thanks a lot.